Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Manager Cook. I wanted to recognize a couple of employees and department programs. We've making some changes in development services. First is an oldie but a goodie. Back in 2013, under the vision and support of the Mayor and Council, the City Manager's Office developed a program called Project Facilitation, or as Mayor Betsy called it, Project Shepherding. Through direct involvement with citizens and developers throughout the development process, this group is responsible for helping to ensure efficient processing by acting as the developer's liaison throughout the development process. I'm proud to announce Dante Rushton as the lead for this program. Dante has over 10 years of experience in planning and land development with disciplines including plan review, land use planning, economic development, and project management. Dante has a master's of city and metropolitan planning from the University of Utah. Some of you have probably already met and worked with Dante already. The two new programs, the first is Development Services has created a new role that will focus solely on continuous improvement of the building and development process. For this purpose, we've hired a new business process manager, Ken Frame. Ken comes to us with 17 years of leadership experience with an emphasis on customer satisfaction, acquisitions, development department, and lean process improvements. Ken has a master's in business administration along with a Six Sigma Black Belt certification. Next, Development Services has created a division in the department to focus solely on business support and customer care. After a highly competitive external search, Janie Morales has been selected to lead these efforts. In her previous roles with the city, Janie has served as acting assistant director, development manager, and customer service manager. She has a history of streamlining processes to facilitate remote and virtual development applications, electronic notary, electronic document recordation, and Adobe eSign for the city of Fort Worth. Janie has a bachelor's degree in business from Western Michigan University and has completed the UTA Customer Service Certification Program. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ. Next up, we have a number of informal reports. The first one is on American Rescue Plan Act allocation recommendations, and Reggie Zeno is available if there are any questions. And I will mention that those items will come to council next week on the 27th. The next informal report is on the City of Fort Worth hiring process, and Deanna Giordano is available if there are any questions.
I have a couple questions.
Deanna.
Hey, how are you? Good. Thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it. I know my office receives them, and I can imagine my colleagues as well. Inquiries from folks that say, I've been trying to get hired on with the city and I can't, what can I do? So I really appreciate this piece of information. My one concern is the waivers to city recruitments. And it says the HR director may grant a department's request to waive participation in the city recruitment process. How often does that happen?
So I looked at data as we were kind of putting together the informal report, and over a year span, it's happened about 100 times. And so you can see that we had quite a few job postings that were advertised in kind of that same time period. Mm-hmm. And they're just jobs that we either have internal talent. Some of them might have been interns that participated in internships with the city. Others are just internal promotional opportunities for individuals. So it's everything from like an assistant, police director, customer service rep, a deputy city attorney job, HR coordinator role. And so they're just jobs that if we know that there's talent that exists in the organization, our preference would be that we not put it out to have a competitive bid or create false hope for people that might have an interest when there's someone that's identified for those roles that has the skill set and the competencies to kind of promote in the organization.
Is there some sort of checklist that we use? Or my concern here is that, one, let me stop and say, I think it's important that we promote from within the city because it gives our employees, they want to stay here because they know that they have a future here with the city of Fort Worth, and we absolutely want to retain our top talent. I think that we often, and in fact, we recently have lost a lot of really great talent because of the lack of ability, available ability to move up and out within the departments. But my concern is this perception that there's special treatment for special people. Some folks call that a variation of the Fort Worth way. And so what can we do to make sure that we are being as transparent as possible and that we're not using these positions to create roles or play favoritism?
Yeah, and so one of the things that we do is we evaluate those requests. We do look at the current workforce and look if to see if there's also internal competition, because if there are others that might qualify for a role or might be interested in a role, we certainly push back. And so these are just the numbers of waivers that we've accepted. There's a handful of those that we've pushed back and said, we prefer that you advertise. And here's why. And so we have some justification or rationale as to why we believe those jobs would be favorable going through a competitive process. So we do have some criteria that's in place where we review each individual request that's submitted by the department so that we can make an appropriate recommendation on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
Deanna, I have a couple of questions for you and one comment. Years ago, I would always ask for a quarterly report on the top 3 positions, that director, assistant director, and that top manager, just to see how we were advancing toward diversity. And I'm proud to see the number of people of color and women that we have in those leadership positions. And I take a lot of pride in helping us get there. One thing that I'm concerned about, and we've discussed it offline, I hear from employees who are very well aware that Austin has announced their minimum $20 an hour, position, and that for sure makes life a bit easier. How far away are we not to getting the $20 an hour, but from keeping up with that pace? If you know where I'm going with
Yeah,
this.
so I'll share just a couple of initiatives that are in the FY23 budget. The first is we have a minimum wage rate of $15 an hour. And so that's an improvement for the city of Fort Worth. We did have some regular part-time and regular full-time positions that fell below that rate. So we are moving everybody to a $15 minimum rate. We will have no positions going forward that fall below that higher rate. In addition to that, we are looking at a 4% pay for performance with the range of 0 to 7%. So it's really depending on somebody's demonstrated performance over the last fiscal year. And so 0 to 7% is a quite favorable process. And I think I showed previously to this body how it kind of plays out with the performance evaluation tool as well as calibration meetings. It's a very fair and consistent process. In addition to that, in FY23, we also have the ability of making some market adjustments for positions that warrant movement for current employees in their current pay range. That was a $3.9 million set aside by the city, in addition to pay for performance, to make some market movement that was sustainable for the individual, because inflation's not going away, but also makes us attractive as an organization so that when we go out to recruit, that we're paying market competitive wages to individuals to attract to our jobs. So those are a couple initiatives. We're also going back and looking at benchmark study jobs. And so we have about 150 classifications out of our 500 or so that we're going to go out and benchmark to other cities across the state of Texas and even some private organizations so that we can make sure that we're maintaining market competitiveness. That will be factored in kind of the FY24 budget. And then we're constantly looking at pay. We're constantly looking at staying market competitive. I think one of the areas that's a challenge for us is kind of working in the metro area. A lot of smaller cities that are very competitive for talent, and we're trying to keep pace, if not outpace them where we can.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thanks for the briefing. You had mentioned that we're raising our minimum wage up to $15 an hour, and there's a report that's published called the Alice Report, and they do it for each county. United Way leads it. But in that report here locally in Tarrant County, I believe a living wage just to pay for basic necessities is $20. I would love for us to, I know we're in the fourth quarter, but I would love for us to look at what it would look like to push that wage to $20, ensure that our employees who are hourly or who are getting paid at the minimum wage can afford to live and meet those basic necessities while living here locally.
Okay.
Deanna, maybe a quick request, it doesn't have to be today, maybe just in a future IR, you probably have it on your desk, a breakdown of pay ranges for employees, so we know how many employees are in that $15 range and what that looks
I
like,
think I asked.
It was in a budget response.
Okay.
That should be in your,
somewhere in a stack
Yes.
of papers. Okay,
yeah,
I'll
and it
find
was
it.
about just under 400, like 382, if I can recall correctly,
Okay.
that were adjusted, and that included full-time and part-time positions, so.
And does our minimum wage threshold also include any contract labor we're utilizing in the community, or no? Do we have any special considerations there?
So those are specific to our employees that are on our payroll, but contract personnel have different standards. We can explore what the current standards are for those. Those are usually going to require a greater wage rate.
Okay, thank you.
But can you go ahead and resend that email to us? I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
Will do.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Got it. All right, the next informal report is DFW International Airport Amendments to Codes of Rules and Regulations. Anybody? Okay. Next up is flooding notification, and Jennifer Dyke is available if there are any questions.
Everyone.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Jennifer?
Jennifer, well, first with some comments. Thank you again and staff for coming to the Diamond Hill Neighborhood Association meeting the other night. I think it worked out very well since our first, attempt to get some questionnaires filled and get some of their feedback in regards to continued improvements on Legal Channel was less than stellar. The recent rain events at least had the effect of bringing it more to the forefront, so we got some really good input that night. So thanks for coming. Now, you and I had talked before on the phone about maybe ways we improve notification when it comes to flooding or, rain events, as they occur. Using existing methods that we have, maybe finding improvements. I believe I talked to IT about this too. Using the My Fort Worth app maybe to get, real-time notifications as well. There is something on the city page, that can also give you some further information, but again, with everyone having a mobile device, just getting onto a web page may be a little more unwieldy as opposed to just bringing it up on your Fort Worth app. Can you talk to us about that, about the likelihood of maybe getting a pop-up alert, in that regard?
Right, so right now the My Fort Worth app is configured to take in information and not push out notification. But it sounds like that is something that's being looked at in terms of the future. And Michelle Good is here somewhere potentially. Michelle, do you want to talk about that at all? And while she comes up here, in terms of pushing out information, so there's two different apps. There's the CASA app, and that is based off of radar estimates. And so people can download that app, and then based off of the location of the phone, they can get information about rain coming to their area. So that's one right now. And then two, there's the Code Red app, and that's the one that the city of Fort Worth really sponsors. So people can go to My Fort Worth, Texas alerts. They can sign up and on the website and get alerts. They can also download the app. And what we're doing to improve that is we're looking at if we can add the locations where we have the flashers across the city. So we're trying to see if we can add those to both the website and the app. And so when people get near those, they will get the real-time notifications. So that's something that we're going to be working on with OEM. Through the Code Red app.
Right, okay. And as far as the flashing beacons that tell folks, of overtopping events or flooding and all that, does that rely on radio frequency transmissions?
Yes,
Okay, all right, thank you.
you're welcome. Michelle, do you want to talk about the My Fort Worth app?
So the My Fort Worth app, a future upgrade will allow us to do push notifications. Right now, it really is intended to take in information. But what we've done is we've added an alert at the top of the app, encouraging people to sign up for Fort Worth, Texas alerts, which is through Code Red. And the other thing we've done is we've moved up the notification where people can report flooding on the app, and that goes right into the CRM and it gets to the department. So we've tried to do some things to help with the reporting of flooding and to get people signed up for the Fort Worth, Texas alerts. And then when it's available with the upgrade to the app, we'll be able to do some push notifications.
Okay, thank you, and I look forward to seeing any additional notifications maybe coming through Renee's office to make people more aware of that. And as always, multiple languages, please. Thank you.
I have a comment, and David, this is not for staff, it's just for you. I can't sit here and be silent when the word flooding, is uttered. And so, although I'm real happy to hear about the notification, my people don't need a notification. They know when it rains, they're going to be flooded. And so I'm looking for the day that the city takes a more proactive, serious look, spending a whole lot more money on the east side of Fort Worth. But just know that that's my input on that topic.
Thank you. Next informal report is monthly development activity, and DJ Harrell is available if there are any questions. All right, and then finally, the last informal report is Stockyards Mobility Study, and Lauren Prieur is available if there are any questions.
No questions, but just some comments, I guess, or two. With regards to that, again, my thanks to staff and also to the Majestic Group for coming together to resolve, a common challenge, right? The success of the Stockyards is bringing in, more than 8 million people annually, and that's wonderful, for the local economy, for the city. But along with it comes those aforementioned challenges. Driving through the Stockyards, especially very heavily attended events, becomes very problematic, along with, parking, pedestrian safety. I know there have been a couple of recent incidents involving pedestrians and vehicles. So we need to make it as accessible and safe as possible. And that is, including looking at, best fits and locations for rideshare programs, et cetera. I do have, a working list as far as the stakeholders to make outreach to, including some individual ones. Lauren, if you could just, tell guest council what our next steps is following our meeting of yesterday, please.
Yeah, so just a little summary. The TPW is conducting a study in the Stockyards to identify solutions like the council member had discussed to improve vehicular circulation, on-street parking assessment, ADA accessibility, as well as pedestrian safety. Again, this is in response to the substantial growth that the Stockyards has experienced over the past few years. So a stakeholder group will be formed that will include TPW staff, TxDOT representatives, and as well as Stockyard stockholders, of course. We're going to meet monthly to provide opportunities for stakeholder input. The study is anticipated to start at the end of this October and is expected to be completed by May of 2023.
Thank you, Lauren.
Mayor, that concludes my report.
Sounds good. Thank you, David. Well, if I go back to my agenda here, folks. We have future agenda items, council, or things that are upcoming for next council meeting, MNC log. Anything on that log that looked problematic or concerning to y'all? Go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, I've got a few. One involving the general assistance grant from the Texas Veterans Commission. I'll be interested in knowing how we're going to push that out, how we're going to market. And that's something that needs to be included. Also, there is a lawsuit involving Ken Paxton. I don't know what that's about. I just saw that.
Okay.
So, and then the American Airlines item.
Okay. Staff, any reason to provide clarification now, or y'all are good for now? We'll just move on. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, I think we can move into our first item here, council, which is our Fort Worth Public Art. Estris Tucker is going to kick us off.
Good afternoon, Mayor Parker, Mayor Pro Tem Bivens, and members of City Council. I am pleased to present the Fort Worth Art Commission's recommended public art plan for the 2022 bond program, which is a result of many months of research, site visits, meeting with city staff, and individual meetings with each member of our City Council. We thank you for your participation and for your insight. Now, for brevity, respect for your time, I'm going to follow the script. I'm not going to read every slide, and I'm going to try to keep eye contact to a minimum because sometimes you pull me off the script.
We're sorry. We're sorry.
As you know, the Fort Worth Public Art Program is guided by the goals and processes outlined in the Fort Worth Public Art Master Plan Update, adopted by City Council in 2017, which includes this vision statement. Public art helps to define Fort Worth's character as a vibrant and sustainable 21st century city by celebrating its storied history, contributing to its iconic destinations, shaping its distinct neighborhoods, and honoring its close connections to nature. The 2022 bond program totaled $560 million. The allocations of public art for each proposition are shown here and total $7,102,000. Now, during our planning process, we were looking for sites that offered opportunities for visibility and public engagement, geographic equity, and for local emerging public artists to participate in the program. In addition, we needed to be cognizant of the requirement to expend public art funds on capital projects within each bond proposition, ensure the public art project budgets are appropriate to the scale of the site for visual impact, and include allowances for project management costs and contingencies, taking into consideration recent cost spikes and other unforeseen needs. Now, Proposition A, Streets and Mobility Infrastructure, includes improvements to 17 arterial corridors and 111 neighborhood streets, and multiple projects under the categories including bridge rehabilitation, street lights, intersections, traffic signals, neighborhood school safety, sidewalks, bicycle facilities, railroad crossings, and safety and mobility. Now, the following slides list those sites the Art Commission has recommended include public art. Circle Park at Northwest 15th Street in Council District 2. The roundabout at Ray White Road at Windrook, currently in Council District 4. After redistricting, it'll be in Council District 10. The intersection of South Hewlin at West Risinger Road in Council District 6. An elevated railroad crossing on Heritage Trace Parkway at Saginaw Boulevard in Council District 7. An elevated railroad crossing on Everman Parkway at Rosedale Springs Lane in Council District 8. Bluebonnet Circle at Park Ridge Boulevard at Council District 9. In addition, the Arts Commission is recommending a set-aside for potential community partnership projects, which would offer opportunities for community groups in any council district to seek matching funds for public art in locations included in the 2022 bond program Proposition A. With council's adoption of this plan, the Art Commission will form a committee to develop eligibility requirements, policies, and procedures for this initiative that will be recommended to City Council in the coming months. Now, here's a recap of the sites in Proposition A, along with recommended budgets for each. Proposition B, Park and Recreation includes over 34 capital improvement projects. The sites the Art Commission has recommended include public art are as follows. Stop 6 Hub Community Center in Council District 5. West Haven Park in Council District 6. Oak Grove Park in Council District 8. Siquio Vasquez Park, formerly known as Echo Lake Park in Council District 9. After redistricting, it will be in Council District 8. And now, one of the big highlights is the Heritage Park and Paddock Park comprise an iconic destination in Fort Worth. It is the site of the original U.S. Army fort and the birthplace of our city. However, this historic significance of this site is multi-layered and deserves to be revealed. In July 2021, the artist team of Legg Lewis Legg, LLC, was contracted to develop a public art master plan for these parks with a charge to reflect the cultural history of the site. For the past year, they have conducted in-depth research and have met with diverse community stakeholders and subject matter experts to inform the master plan, which we look forward to sharing with you very soon. As part of the public art plan for the 2022 bond program, the Art Commission recommends funding to address a prominent site in Paddock Park as well as another site along the Trail and Heritage Park to honor the indigenous people and Native Americans, African Americans, and Mexican Americans who have called this site home. Now here's a summary of projects in Proposition B, Parks and Recreation Improvements. Proposition C, Library, and Proposition D, Police and Fire Safety Improvements, offer an opportunity to include public art at each of these new facilities. The summary includes the public art budgets for Far Northwest Library in Council District 7, after redistricting, Council District 10, Fire Station number 16 in Council District 3, Fire Station number 37 in Council District 4, after redistricting will be Council District 10, and the Northwest Patrol Division in Council District 2. And last, at the public hearing on August 15th and September 19th yesterday, we heard support for opportunities for local artists and for the Heritage Park Powder Park project. Last evening, the Art Commission made a formal recommendation to the council to adoption of this plan. We anticipate an agenda to come before you in October. Now I'd like to turn over to Martha Peters for a briefing on the fiscal year 2023 annual work plan.
Thank you, Esdras. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and Mr. Cook. It's my pleasure to present the annual work plan and give you a little update and a report on some accomplishments of FY 2022. I first want to recognize Wesley Gentle, interim president at Arts Fort Worth, here joining us today. So first of all, we're excited that we were able to have a big installation finished last week. It's Christopher Fennell's 12 weather vane sculptures made by upcycled materials, many of which were contributed by the community. This first slide shows the horse made out of bicycles, the rabbit made out of auto springs, the hawk made out of cross sections of airplane wings, and the armadillo with shovel heads and bumpers, and there are others. So this goes along a 3-mile stretch. These are actual working weather vanes that pivot very, very slowly in the wind. And the artist was very interested in referencing the historic nature of the land, which was ranch land before it became part of North Fort Worth. And that made him think of barns, which made him think of weather vanes, et cetera. And working with found objects is part of what this artist does. So we're not surprised by that. And hopefully it brings a smile to people's faces on this 3-mile stretch from Shriver to Timberlane. The East Regional Library project in District 4 was also completed in May. This is called Wildflower by Fugue Limited. These upright vertical metal pieces are something you can discover up close. Many of them have quotations from books or quotations about literature. I see a smile on your face. It's done. And then from I-30, it really has the effect, which was desired, of a field of wildflowers. So it's a nice addition to this library, and it creates a bit of a landmark as you're coming into Fort Worth from the east. This beautiful piece was installed just last month along Forest Park Boulevard. It was funded by 2014 bond funds, and actually that building peeking up over there is the vehicle maintenance facility and Holly Water Treatment Plant, which the funding was derived from. Since the water department didn't think the water treatment plant was the right place for art, we got permission to bring the piece out onto Forest Park Boulevard and worked really hard with the Water District and the Corps of Engineers to get permission to be on the levee with this piece. The artist Lene Bowman Cravens from Fort Worth, this was her first public art piece. She actually works in folded paper in her studio practice. So it was exciting for her to bring this idea into a sculptural form, and I think you'll agree the scale is beautiful. It's something you can even see from the Lancaster Bridge when you're driving eastward. Let's see. And this piece is actually going in this week. This is at the Rosemont Park. It's a sensory maze by Virginia Fleck. You can see the sidewalk in that round circular concrete area is where these uprights will be installed with some decomposed granite as a base. And this is something that's meant to be walked through, very delightful for children, lots of color. The edges have kind of a mirrored finish. And also, if you gently hit the different beams, they will give off a little different sound. So that will be done before the end of this fiscal year. And then this piece, Elizabeth Akumatsu's Rising Strong for the Diamond Hill Community Center. The sculpture's actually done, but it's going to be in storage for a few months, awaiting the right time to go in front of the new community center. So this gives you an idea of how the colorful wall will be reflected in the stainless steel. And there'll also be this little seat wall that people can enjoy right near the entrance of the building. Last time I was before you, we were talking about project delivery and some of our legacy projects we need to get finished. And so I'm happy to say that by the end of the month, we will have completed 3. And the other 9, we expect to be completed this next fiscal year. So we're working hard. We're making that a goal, as well as starting up on some new projects, which many of them you just heard about in this 2022 bond program. The projects listed here are all moving forward now. So we're going to jump right in and get started on those as well. We're very much looking forward to working with all of you on helping us form project core teams and being part of artist selection and so forth. Another opportunity that's come up is through the Near South Side. They are receiving TIF funding from the TIF number 4 to create improvements under the underpass at I-35 in East Rosedale and create more of a gateway into the historic South Side neighborhood. So we're hoping to move some funds we had set aside for Gwynn School Plaza so we can contribute to this. And it looks like most of the funding for public art might come from that TIF. So we're beginning to think about what could be there, and it's an exciting opportunity to work with that neighborhood. So in terms of, for FY 2023, these are the projects in progress, just to give you an idea that most of what we're working on are 2018 bond program projects, and like I said, these other projects we're working on to complete this next year, some of which have multiple funding sources. And then in terms of collection management, you all are very aware of the Will Rogers Memorial Center Historic Tile Mural interpretive plaques we're working on. And we have completed the research and developed the text, and now that's being vetted with various community groups before we bring it forward to the Art Commission and to you all. The idea being these would be bronze plaques in the plaza that would give some historic context to each of the vignettes, each of the 6 vignettes in both the Coliseum and auditorium murals. And as you may recall, ARPA funding and public events funding and some public art funding is going into this project. In addition, we'll be able to get started on the technology upgrades to the Avenue of Light sculptures on West Lancaster downtown. We've been waiting to be able to coordinate with the Parks Department's media and landscaping project, which is kicking off soon. So soon we'll have these beautiful towers lit and we'll be able to change colors for special occasions, and we're really looking forward to that. Whoops, sorry, I went a little fast there. So again, ongoing, we're going to continue to improve our project delivery and bring projects in a quick and efficient way as best we can. We're going to work on this community partnership project with the Art Commission to develop guidelines and a process for those projects. And then as we continue to implement the Public Art Master Plan update, we really consider the Heritage Park projects as iconic artworks, and also ongoing, many of these opportunities in 2022 bond will be for local artists. And then we are doing some brainstorming on how we could bring, innovative ways we could bring art into the new City Hall. So, one thing I did fail to mention is we just also were able to replenish our pre-qualified list of artists. This includes local emerging artists and national artists. and we have a more diverse pool than we've had before. So we're really proud of that. There's room to grow in that regard, but those artists will be pulled for many of these projects. So all in all, we'll have about 44 new and ongoing projects with a value of over 13 million, multiple collection management projects, and then new and ongoing initiatives. The Art Commission endorsed the draft plan in August. We had a public hearing last night. They are recommending this plan to you, and an M&C would be on your agenda in October. So Esdras and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, council? Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you, Esdras, for that presentation. Back in July, Esdras and I had sat down, and he stepped me through, some of the ideas and proposals that you've had. You may recall, Esdras, that at the time I said I think I would want to, sit down with, your group and, and offer and discuss some other potential options, with regards to Northwest 15th Street and Circle Park. So I'd like to do that, sooner rather than later.
All right, we'd be happy to do that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council? No? Okay. Thank y'all very much for the updates. Our next presentation is going to be on East Lancaster Corridor and Sub-Regional Planning Study. I think Kelly Porter is going to lead us in that discussion.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I'm here to talk to you a bit about really the next steps on East Lancaster to get this through the finish line so we can see some really wonderful new, hopefully, transportation options for people to be able to get around a rebuilt corridor and the supporting land use and economic development to go along with it. So I've given a brief kind of, I'll call it TOPIS overview to the CMO, and City Manager Dave Cook wanted me to go ahead and do a bit more extended presentation for you all. So give you an idea, this study that's going to push this over the finish line is really going to be led by the City of Fort Worth team, my team, and TPW. We do have study partners that we've involved in the scoping and in the discussions on these next steps, so we're on alignment. We had that, I believe, a pretty big meeting when I first started last fall, where it was all of us in a room with Michael Morris and Trinity Metro or whatnot talking about what are we doing. This is going to get us over the finish line. I do want to point out that as I talk through what's happening on that corridor, some things that we really do have to think about. Remember, the City of Fort Worth has a lot of authority and competency on what happens beyond the curb from our land use and our economic development incentives, and a lot of stakeholders that we want to keep engaged, and a lot of say in what happens on that corridor. And Fort Worth, TxDOT owns the actual right-of-way of that corridor. It's a TxDOT facility, so we need to be mindful of them as partners, and they are putting quite a bit of money towards this. For those of my people on council that are also on RTC, remember too that COG, anything that has federal funds is going to have to go through COG. And so we're going to have to make sure that COG's on board as well. So we're bringing them together. And then, of course, we're looking at this as a multimodal corridor. So we want to have our partners at Trinity Metro involved as well. And want to make sure that whatever we put there is really going to be able to benefit the community. And we're looking at a whole host of options. So whenever I bring y'all a recommendation on an alternative, you guys have the data and the outreach to support it. So the planned purpose is really to get us a city council adopted preferred alternative for both roadways, and I'll talk about those roadways we're looking at as part of this, as well as the transit mode and route along the corridor, so we can go ahead and hand things over to TxDOT to get the roadway and the roadway that would include any sort of transit element cleared through the environmental process. And that's a big step to be able to get things funded as well as to get things into construction. We're gonna do this based on sound data and a lot of community outreach. We're also gonna be coordinating, like as I said before, with TxDOT and their environmental process on getting this roadway rebuilt. And then, of course, it's gonna include various safety, operational, and other types of placemaking improvements, not only Lancaster, but we're also gonna understand how this corridor toggles back and forth with I-30 and some of the other roadways in the area. And then what I wanna bring you back at the end of this planning process, after we've gotten a preferred alternative, is a full kind of implementation plan that'll include a form-based code and regulating plan. So once again, I'm gonna say this, what you guys adopt, and hopefully next summer, will be the concept that advances design and construction. So that's it. You don't have to worry about additional East Lancaster planning studies and all these other things. We know what we're gonna do, we know what we're gonna fund, we know we're gonna move forward towards construction and design. So around that time, we developed 5 guiding principles when we met last year. I believe it was Dana and myself, and we met with you all and other folks to come up with 5 guiding principles that's helped us develop the scope. You're going to see this come up a lot too as we start to think about technology and our city and corridors and how they operate and operations. We're going to be thinking about this as a hot corridor. And so you're going to hear that hopefully come up more often as we look at other corridors throughout the city. But we really want to have a comprehensive approach to this transportation investment, ensure that we have the policies that go along with it or whatnot. So the study area is fairly broad. It includes East Lancaster from really downtown all the way out to the city limit. And I said before, we're kind of looking at as I-30 gets bigger, what happens with Lancaster and how's the context change. So that yellow that you see on the map shows you where you're going to be approving a preferred alternative for on Lancaster. That may be multiple cross sections, but there'll be an alternative for the roadway on Lancaster. We're also, since TxDOT's planning to start the planning and design of I-30 from Cooper to downtown, this is an opportunity for us to also give them an alternative for some of those roads that parallel I-30, like Bridge Street and Brentwood Stairs, part of this. And we're going out to public, we're able to go out to public one time, they can provide their comments, and we can also have something that we can get over to TxDOT that they can advance and incorporate into that. Transit will be looking really along Lancaster from downtown all the way out to the city limit. And depending on where we end up with the public and what the data and the alternatives analysis shows us, will tell us what mode we might be looking at. And mode meaning, is this a bus? Is it a streetcar? What is it? It's going to be looking at all types of modes. And then also the routing. We went to the public last year to talk to them about, hey, where do you want to go? What do you want to do if you were using transit along this corridor? A lot of people were like, we're not sure if Hanley's a place we want to go to. So maybe there's an opportunity to look further, to connect further east or north or whatever. So we're going to be looking at route and mode as part of this. And this is part of what you'd have to do anyway through an environmental process. The city's finally we're going to take a look at that and get that over the goal line. So it's going to be comprehensive, it's going to be data-driven, and it's going to create a real vision for this study area and really be able to allow for us to dictate, hopefully, what happens here in our city versus things happening to us. So I'm going to explain to you about a four-step planning process today that'll really walk you through kind of the outreach, the data analysis we're going to be looking at, and then what that final plan is going to come out with. I do have on number 2 and number 4, notice that there's little asterisks at the end. That's when I'm coming back to council and going to be recommending an alternative for you for first the roadway and the transit mode and route, and then coming back to you later on with a full final plan with code and economic development incentives and all those things that'll go as a package. Might as well come one time, so I'm not coming back to you for the next 3 or 4 years, piecemealing stuff. We want a world-class corridor, and we're gonna do what we have to do our part to get there. And so for those of you on RTC, you're probably gonna see some of this twice because you're gonna be approving that preferred alternative, right? You're gonna also have to put it into the long-range plan in the TIP. So just note that we have our roles and our steps we're gonna be following. So task 1 that we've kind of developed is that stakeholder outreach. We're gonna have a stakeholder advisory committee as part of this. We're gonna develop visions and goals. We're planning to have multiple rounds of public open houses, which we're trying to right size right now with the consultant. And then also for those that can't necessarily attend open houses or those we know we need to reach out to for specific areas like the neighborhood associations and other folks that we wanna hear more give more fine-grained detail to, business owners, landowners. We'll have focus groups, of course we'll have surveys, we'll have interviews, and of course we're gonna ensure to reach out to vulnerable populations in that corridor to make sure that we're hearing from everybody, and then we're gonna maintain a project website. To give you an idea, like I said, we're gonna be building off of some of this past work to take things forward, so we're gonna be looking at things like the past work that was done on East Lancaster for that looked at really land use, and that really just looked at downtown to Hanley. We're gonna kind of take that work and look further east, look north along I-30, how any sort of transit might connect into what happens on I-30, coordinating with TxDOT, of course, because there will be high-intensity bus planned between Dallas and Fort Worth by then, so we want to be able to see how we leverage that service. So that's why I have that little map there with some of COG's things on there, and of course, some of the past work that COG completed on East Lancaster. We're going to be working with all of that. And, in addition to the plans and studies, we're going to be doing a whole host of analysis. Nice thing is, during this time on the transit front, COG is going to be working with Trinity Metro on updating their ridership numbers to do a proper survey. So we have the actual ridership numbers along the corridor through a statistically sound survey that'll provide some additional insight into that. So the alternatives analysis that we're going through is going to help define a purpose and need which is needed for our environmental document. That's going to be for the roadway and the transit. It's also going to include some alternative screening criteria that we'll use to kind of take all the ideas and screen them through so we can come up with, we're saying about 3 to 5 reasonable alternatives that we'll be able to take to the public. So we'll be able to look at different modes, different routings, understand different, environmental factors, cost factors, construction factors, all those types of things that go along with it, as well as, different policy factors that go along. Once we've gone to the public and we've been able to further refine that, some alternatives and get the public comment or whatnot, and look at the data, I'll come to you all hopefully next summer with a preferred alternative for your adoption. And that's going to look at roadway for East Lancaster Street from downtown out to the city limit, as well as Brentwood Stair Road and Bridge Street, really looking at those, how they parallel 30, those segments that go from Oakland over to Bridgewood. And that'll tie into the I-30 work as well. Might as well go out and do all this stuff while we're talking to the public. And then transit will be routing. Where's the transit going from downtown out to the east? And then, of course, the mode. What are we looking at? Are we looking at something, a bus running, articulated bus running in the center of the corridor, on the right side of the corridor, or is it streetcar? What is it? We're gonna be able to look at all these different, the universal alternatives, and then whittle it down. So you'll have that specific route, that specific mode coming forward to y'all, as well as roadway cross sections. Once we have a preferred alternative, and we're able to start to shape a concept plan around that, that's gonna look at the technology elements that we're gonna use to help support whatever alternatives we pick. So that's gonna look at everything from hard infrastructure like street grids and cross sections to other technological infrastructure like fiber. Do we have Wi-Fi along the corridor? How do we connect the signals? How do we connect the bike share stations to, the users on the transit or whatnot? We're also gonna be looking at land use and zoning to ensure that whatever big investment we put on that corridor, the land use and the different things match that. And then, of course, we're looking at housing, economic development opportunities, as well as other factors like, being able to support, environmental goals, and of course, placemaking. Out of that, we'll bring back to you, as part of a final plan, a project program with short, near, and long-term projects that we'll be able to implement along the corridor. So we'll be able to have some predictability when things are going to happen. Of course, final cross sections for the transit route and the mode based on the preferred alternative. Recommended zoning with a form-based code and a regulating plan to go along with that. And of course, prioritize priorities with those projects. And then we'll also be able to potentially update our MTP and other documents to make sure everything's consistent. And we're going to hand over some environmental commitments to TxDOT that include in their environmental documentation. And so as part of that final adoption, it'll be a suite of policy and project program. Give you a high-level timeline of how all this is going to go down is that we're ensuring that the TxDOT's going to start some utility work, like I believe in the next few months. So we're going to be overlapping with that work. That's going to save us some time and some money. Also, the outreach we're going to be doing is going to save TxDOT a lot of time as they go to construct the corridor and design the corridor, just because we're able to get some of the outreach they need as part of the federal process. But the study duration is going to really start this fall, and it's going to go through spring or so of 2024. But I'm going to come back to you all next summer with a recommendation for preferred alternatives, and then a final plan then next spring. Once you get the alternatives, the great thing is TxDOT can actually start to design and develop that work while we're also developing the rest of the plan. So we're trying to leverage to put this on a fast track. And then we'll be able to hopefully get this thing, get some, preliminary schematics out of this by spring 2023 for TxDOT to be able to start on some of that work to develop what you all pick as preferred alternative. And then we'll be able to go forth and get that environmentally clear by summer of 2025 and hopefully start construction by early 2026, which also lines up with our bond program and the timeline for that. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. So I see our timeline. I know we had a meeting almost a year ago where the city of Fort Worth was going to take the lead in this project. But our timeline, my question is for funding for federal and funding dollars that Trinity Metro have. Is our timeline in line with COG and Trinity Metro?
Our timeline's definitely in line with COG. And just the thing I want to make clear to everybody here is that this is essentially a TxDOT roadway project. They're getting our input in. We're incorporating transit in that. So a lot of what really matters is going to be TxDOT and COG are going to be in the same set. They're the ones bringing the dollars to the table, and TxDOT got control of the roadway. So we also have to be sensitive to kind of some of the politics and some of the policy that TxDOT's under too, with what they can and can't do on the roadway. So there's a lot of things that we're gonna have to be able to line up, but it shouldn't impact too much. As far as timeline goes, you really can't move the project forward without an alternative. So that's kind of the grander scheme of things, and we can't move any faster than TxDOT moves because we don't own the roadway. So I think this will all get us good and synced up, but I've been working with Trinity Metro. Chad Edwards and I meet often, and we've all commented on the scopes and the direction we're going in, so we should all be in really good shape.
I'll mention, Chris, I serve as vice chair of RTC, and so we are in lockstep with Michael Morris and the COG. I've explained to people at Trinity Metro that it's to their benefit that they too be in lockstep. There had been quite a bit of conversation about putting the mode in the center of Lancaster, but imagine people in wheelchairs trying to get to the middle of Lancaster to board anything. I do know that the preferred placement from the COG is at the curb. I support that, and I think we're good. Now, when it comes to the politics, there have been politics. I'm not going to act like there have not been, but I think we're able to overcome those because of the relationship we have with COG. And once you remind the public that no dollars come here from the feds for transportation unless they go through COG, you'd have to be just darn near crazy to oppose what COG would recommend. So I'm very confident that we're going to be good. Now, I don't like the idea that nobody wants to go to Handley, so we'll have to work on that. That's the bridal capital of North Texas, and we have 2 historic cemeteries there, too.
I do have a question, because I know that conversation has been brought up, the middle and the outside. And I know we have done this, but my question is, when you go into other cities, there are several cities who have done it differently. Recently, when Michael Crane and I went on a city council trip to Spain, they actually had both. I mean, I guess their roadways is much larger. And so I know some of the neighborhoods in Meadowbrook has they're concerned about the economic development that's going to take place and how, maybe restaurants are going to come and the sidewalks are going to be much larger to have a more pedestrian walkway and sit down outside. And they had that in other areas. And so that would be my only concern where we talk about whether it should be in the middle or the outside. How do we preserve those sidewalks, and how do we preserve making sure that what the community who's going to live there have a say? And I know you have a community conversation, but how we're going to preserve their thought pattern to the process, and what other cities are we looking at, or even out of the country, are we looking at to model what East Lancaster is going to be?
So we can look at all kinds of case studies around the country, from Indianapolis to Cleveland and what you'll find is, like in Indy, they actually use both. It's a very different context on the corridor, and they have a lot of legacy density. And in Spain, you got a lot of legacy density. So that's why we're doing code, and we're trying to do the transportation improvement with that, so both things match, because we have a bit of evolution to go to before we have the big sidewalk cafes or whatnot. But what our code will do, that'll be part of this final plan, will allow us to be able to get that space as the corridor changes and redevelops, so we can have those cafes and we can have that type of stuff. If it does run on the right side, which in Indianapolis and in Cleveland, just to name a couple, and even Eugene, Oregon, it can go from the right side into the middle and change in different places. A lot of things are going to depend on its old corridor, so it's going to impact. So depending on where we go, that could really drive the cost up. If you have utilities in the middle, right? It could drive the cost up because that's in such an old corridor. We're already going to have to deal with antiquities. So that's if it runs in the middle. But we're going to look at both to make sure. And that's the thing, since from what I've seen since I've been here is, we haven't necessarily gone through the full process to figure out what's really going to work and be feasible, and what's going to put the bang for our buck. So we're going to look at all those different alternatives. Also look at mode. And to your point too, we're also going to be sure to future-proof it to where when we do get that economic investment, because we will, because we're gonna get our policies and everything together to make that area, continue to make the area attractive for those that are there and those that may want to invest in the area. What we'll be able to do is ensure that we can scale up anything as the densities change and other things like that. So if we start off with BRT, we can go to streetcar or do something else later on. So future-proofing will be really important.
I like the word future-proof, because David, didn't you consider Portland dirty now? Is that the city that you went to? Well, let me tell you, years ago, and Chris, you'll be interested in this, years ago when we started taking transportation trips to Portland, we were just fascinated how you could step from a sidewalk over some shrubbery and on the train. And they thought they were way ahead, but now they're described as dirty. And so the idea of future-proofing is very important, but the key is the federal dollars come because COG is in support. And you got to remember, Lancaster is not a street, that's a state highway. And so there are some restrictions that the general public has to always keep in front of them, because people don't think of Rosedale or Lancaster as highways, but that's what they are. So the public process is very important, but it also shows what we thought was grand back in the 90s is now called nasty. Go figure. Thank
Kelly, when you look at the high-level timeline, which was really helpful, obviously, it would be nice if we could start construction before early 2026. I recognize the pitfall and partnership that's needed with TxDOT because it's a state highway. But I just wonder what, if anything, we or me in particular could do to help incentivize TxDOT to help us move a little quicker, because it's a corridor that I know all of us around this table are really interested in helping further, and that seems like a long time away from now.
So I think we're probably a little bit conservative on the estimates.
That's what worries me.
We can definitely talk to, it would keep us on par with the bond. It's that environmental clearance. And so we're thinking that we could probably get it under maybe a categorical exclusion, but with the antiquities along the corridor, since it's so old, we're gonna find something as we go through it. And so that could slow it down. I'd say, Mayor, the best thing we can do is just make sure that as we get things on the agenda, we start getting things approved and don't delay anything and all get on the same page so we can move it forward as fast as possible. But there may be some months that we may be able to move some things back. It's just gonna be that environmental clearance. It's just such an old corridor and historic that's gonna be the big holdup.
Why does the study take almost 2 years?
So it's as far as the study itself, so essentially you're gonna have an alternative by next summer. And that's for us to be able to go through a whole process. I may be able to get that done faster.
Mm-hmm.
So on my end, I may be able to get actually that done faster. We want to, make sure we were trying to, how do they say it, under promise and over deliver a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we may be able to get that done faster. As soon as we get that preferred alternative done, TxDOT can start developing things, and that could move things up maybe a month or two or a little bit more. So a lot of that's really the linchpin. The rest of the stuff is the stuff that we can work on kind of behind the scenes with the code and other things like that. But that preferred alternative is going to be pretty critical. And we're hoping to have the consultant under contract within the next month or two so we can go ahead and start things in earnest in the winter. And the preferred alternative shouldn't take us that long to get through because so much of the other work has been done. So I will work on that on my side to try to make sure we advance that as fast as possible.
Okay. I'm happy to be helpful if at any point you need it. Thank you, Kelly.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. Any other questions for Kelly? It's very exciting. Thank you, Kelly, very much. Okay, more mobility. Here we go. University Drive improvements, phases 1 and 2.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm excited to show you what the University Corridor will look like in the near future. So today we will cover our Phase 1 and Phase 2 project scope, schedule, and budget, talk about past and present public outreach, and finally provide an update on the West 7th project while I'm in the hot seat. So about 5 years ago, the Fort Worth Community Design Center completed a corridor and gateway strategy study on University Drive and made recommendations for improvements. The university projects are a result of those recommendations. So the corridor stretches from Trail Drive to West Canty Street near TCU. Phase 1 and 2 are only a portion of the entire corridor, so I hope there will be future phases. University Drive welcomes over 5 million visitors every year, but the existing roadway has a wide and unwelcoming highway feel to it. Our project intends to make this corridor a gateway to Fort Worth's cultural attractions. So our focus here is on improving the safety for all users and enhancing the corridor's alternative modes of transportation, signage, and aesthetics. Neither phase intends to reconstruct the existing pavement. It should be noted that the different funding sources will impact the speed at which the projects can be delivered. TxDOT funds take longer schedules. So phase 1 covers the commercial core. It extends from the West Rosedale overpass to Riverfront Drive, just north of the Trinity River, and it includes Old University Drive. So our scope of work consists of consistent street lighting, replacement of the sanitary sewer line, replacement of pedestrian safety elements, new medians and left turn bays, as well as new pavement. So the bus shelters and wayfinding signage will be updated and ADA compliant. The city is constructing the concrete pads, and Trinity Metro will install the bus stop shelters. So this is a satellite view. The area has a very car-centric feel to it, and it's not very pedestrian-friendly or aesthetically pleasing. So this slide shows the overall phase 1 concept. The next few slides are close-ups, starting at the north end. So we are installing a narrow solid median throughout the limits with various left turn lanes. The landscape pockets are limited to only 3 due to the limited width of the median alongside the project limits. So the existing traffic signal at Old University Drive will also be upgraded, and a new signal will be installed at Collingsworth. So this is the north end of phase 1, starting at West Rosedale. The median is designated by the tan color shapes with a landscaped island at the very north end. Sidewalks are being added or reconstructed as shown in blue. The width of the sidewalk is going to vary from 4 to 6 feet depending on the location. So wider sidewalks or shared paths really weren't feasible here, as they would have required significant right-of-way from a well-established corridor. So crosswalks are designated in red. The northern crosswalk at Old University will be eliminated due to safety and visibility concerns. ADA compliant ramps will be constructed along with stamped concrete crosswalks. So the existing signal will be replaced with a new powder-coated black signal. So this slide shows the improvements on Old University Drive, including a continuous median to Collingsworth. Crosswalks are designated in red. The south crosswalk will be eliminated at Collingsworth due to safety concerns. So like at Old University, ADA compliant curb ramps will be constructed along with the stamped concrete crosswalks. Also, a traffic signal, powder-coated black, will be installed at Collingsworth. So we have coordinated with Trademark to facilitate its redevelopment of the former residence in site. The city will install a mast arm and signal heads for the future westbound signal facing that site. So Trademark will be constructing a driveway to line up with Collingsworth and also constructing the sidewalks along its frontage. So Old University Drive will be right-sized to accommodate all users. We are restriping to provide 2 11-foot lanes, a bike lane buffer, a bike lane, and a parking lane. So there will be no hard improvements, no concrete improvements to this street, only pavement markings for the bike lanes. We're also adding sidewalks as shown in blue and connecting to the Trinity trails here. So the landscaping design consists of plants and grasses of differing colors, which can vary naturally with the seasons. Specimen pictures are shown on the next slides. The landscape islands are surrounded by brick pavers of a light tan tone, similar to that shown in this rendering. Irrigation is also being installed, and all landscaping improvements have been coordinated with the Parks and Recreation Department through many meetings. So this is our plant palette. We've selected native prairie plants, native to north central Texas, that are drought tolerant, low profile, and provide seasonal color. Please don't ask me questions on this slide. The side oats grandma, I will have to phone a friend. The side oats grandma is the state grass of Texas. The seed heads will add texture and visual interest. The little blue stem adds compact heights and various colors through the season. So our total project cost is $5.3 million, with $3.4 million in construction costs. So construction is anticipated to begin late October or early November after substantial completion of the West 7th project. Construction will coordinate with events like the Colonial Golf Tournament, TCU football games, and zoo events to limit the impacts on the traveling public. The only outstanding easements are for a bus stop, which is to be dedicated by Trademark through its redevelopment project at the southeast end of the university project. So we are ready to go. So a little bit about our stakeholder outreach. Our stakeholder outreach is focused on the area from Rosedale to Park Hill Drive and in the south, and Colonial Drive to Forest Park Boulevard in the east. To date, our team has coordinated with 15 different property owners fronting university, eight of which have granted us the required easements. So members of the Fort Worth Community Design Center have also been an integral part of the project concept and design development. So thank you to them. We've held 3 public meetings to date, including one dedicated to business stakeholders and numerous individual meetings or phone calls with the easement grantors. So our pre-construction community meeting will be held this October 12th at 6 p.m. at the Fort Worth Zoo. So during construction, the public can find monthly updates on our project website and by attending a monthly on-site construction progress meeting. So we're also going to offer brief updates through our texting service, CityBot. Detailed project updates will be found in a quarterly city news articles, and they'll also be mailed at a 6-month construction mark. So similar to the West 7th construction, one lane in each direction may be closed to construct the medians. Alternate pedestrian access will be provided when constructing the sidewalks, and driveway access will be maintained. Any site-specific questions can be directed to our project manager, Mr. Mark McCoy. So Phase 2. Phase 2 is immediately north of Phase 1. The project limits are from Trail Drive to Rosedale. This also includes the frontage along the Botanic Gardens and the Trinity Park. So this project scope is going to be very similar to Phase 1 and includes sidewalk improvements, median improvements, and landscaping. Our scope of work will include consistent street lighting, pedestrian safety elements, new medians and left turn bays, as well as new pavement. So the draft scope of work for Phase 2 is based on the Fort Worth Community Design Center report and recommendations. So our consultant is currently reviewing the concept for feasibility, and it will provide us a cost estimate to confirm that we are within budget. A conceptual schematic will then be developed, peer-reviewed, and vetted with internal and external stakeholder input. So the total project budget for Phase 2 is $7.7 million. The typical 20% funding match for TxDOT project is being met using our transportation development credits. So as long as we stay on budget, there is no out-of-pocket cost to the city of Fort Worth for this. So the MNC for Phase 2 design contract is currently routing for approval. The estimated council date is September 27th. The schedule requires a longer process than projects with local funding. The selection of a design consultant will require TxDOT procurement processes and their approval at every step. The design must meet TxDOT requirements, which include the following the environmental review process. The bid and award will require letters of authorization by TxDOT, and letting is subjected to a little bit of a longer process. So before we take questions, let's talk a little bit about West 7th. The project is currently 70% complete. Pending items include the median construction from Foch to University, landscaping, and pavement markings. So we anticipate being substantially complete this November. The West 7th construction delays have been primarily due to inconsistent levels of work crews on site and plan discrepancies that have taken numerous meetings to resolve. To mitigate further delays on West 7th, additional contractor staff has been added, along with weekly field meetings between contractor, designer, and the city. So I'll be honest, we stubbed our toe on this one, but now is the time for partnership and teamwork. Our contractor and our designer have shown they're willing and able to make this right. I'll take your questions.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I know we had a discussion about West 7th, and I appreciate the contractors' struggle to get staff. We experience that in the city and across the community. But to me, making it right is getting it back on schedule. And so I think the last community meeting I went to, we told them it was July, and then that was updated to October, and now on today's presentation, it's November. I'll reserve my comments or opinions for whether or not that was the most appropriate street to do that on, but we're doing it. And we are creating a huge headache for the residents that live there and the folks that work there. And so I would like to see it made right by seeing that November date pushed back, because in my mind, that's the only way we make it right.
Yes, ma'am. We're very focused on meeting and exceeding that November date, and I completely understand your comments.
Thank you.
My only comment would be, this is very, very helpful, and thanks for giving us an update on West 7th as well. I'll get to that in a second. On University, sounds like you've had a lot of meetings. Have you gotten positive feedback, especially from business owners there on the corridor so far?
Yes, I mean, I think that's evident by, we've received all the easements that we need. And, a lot of that goes back to staff's coordination and meetings to make sure they have all the information they need.
Okay. And what about neighborhoods that are going to be impacted? I'll channel Michael Crane since he's not here, and helping Elizabeth where they connect all the way up into Park Hill and then in the Colonial Hills area. Are they pretty knowledgeable this project is imminent?
I won't speak for the neighborhoods, but, they have been invited to the meetings. We've had 3 meetings. Only one of those was really focused on the businesses. So they've had 2 opportunities to come and see what's going on. We also have the mailers. And with this project, we're going to be going above and beyond in our communication strategy.
Okay, that's great. And on West 7th, you alluded to this already. There's been lots of comments about it and frustration, obviously. And I'm anxious for the construction to be complete just so people can kind of see whether the design works or not, for us to kind of evaluate as a community. I mean, we all love complete streets and bike lanes and the things that are offered in West 7th. It's just such a congested area. It's really difficult for us to have to see. So maybe we just come back to that, evaluate, and see where traffic counts are. And then last thing, if you think about connectivity over to White Settlement, right now it's sort of limited. Is it Curie that goes across all the way down? That's pretty much it that goes. So I just want us to kind of be cognizant of that, as much construction has made people upset and angry right now. So
Yes, ma'am.
as you've heard.
Completely understand.
Okay, thank you. Yes, okay, great, thank you. What's that? Yeah, I think that's all. Okay, that's the last of our presentations, Council. Do we have any future agenda items around the table? Leonard, I'm going to start with you to make sure you don't have anything so I don't forget about you up there.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else, future agenda items? No, Jerry, go ahead.
Just, I've already connected with Deanna, but just, I would love for us to talk more about the minimum wage conversation and how we can be supportive.
Anybody else? Awesome. Meeting adjourned. Thank y'all.